Looks like we have a great attendance today. Fantastic. All right, well, we'll get started then. So good morning. Welcome everyone to the Thursday, November 5th, 2020 meeting of the Cities and County Transportation Advisory Committee. We will start with a roll call. I will call your agency, and if you could just unmute yourself and introduce yourself, that would be great. I'm Julie Procopio, the chair from the City of Escondido, the City of Solana Beach.
Good morning, Mo Samok, City of Solana Beach. Thank you.
Morning. City of Carlsbad.
Good morning, Hossein Ajide, City of Carlsbad.
Morning. City of Chula Vista.
Good morning, Frank Rivera, City of Chula Vista.
Morning. City of Coronado.
Good morning, Ed Walton, City of Coronado is here.
City of Del Mar. Do we have anyone from Del Mar? Don't think we do. City of El Cajon.
Morning, Mario Sanchez, City of El Cajon.
Morning. City of Encinitas.
Morning. Good morning, Ed Wimmer here from Encinitas.
Morning. City of Imperial Beach.
Good morning, Juan Larios, City of Imperial Beach.
City of La Mesa.
Hi, this is Phil Kern from City of La Mesa.
City of Lemon Grove.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Mike James.
Morning. Let's see, do we have anyone from the City of National City here today? No. City of Oceanside. I see David here. I guess we'll make a note that he's here. He may be having some trouble with his mic. City of Poway.
Melody Rocco, City of Poway.
And City of San Diego.
Gary Chewy, City of San Diego. Thank you.
Great. City of San Marcos.
Good morning, Ed Dean with the City of San Marcos.
And Santee.
Good morning, Minji May with the City of Santee is here.
And Vista.
Good morning, Matt Atterbury, City of Vista.
And the County of San Diego.
Good morning, Bill Morgan with the County of San Diego.
Okay, and representing Caltrans. I know that Bing Lu is here. And then Alex, would you like to introduce the other Sandag attendees?
Alex, if you're speaking, this is Sandag Production, you're muted.
Thank you. I have myself, Alex Estrella. We have Tim Horniak, our intern. And then we also have Ray Major from Sandag. We also have Jenny Russo from Sandag. We have Sam Sanford from Sandag. We have Sue Alpert from Sandag and Tracy Fenshaw from Sandag. If I miss any other Sandag staff, please introduce yourself. And I apologize if I did.
Hi, Ellison Allegre from Sandag.
Oh, thanks, Ellison.
Great, and is there anybody else that we missed?
This is Bill Valley from City of Chula Vista.
Great, okay, fantastic. So we will start with our item number 2, which is approval of the October 1st, 2020 meeting minutes. If everybody could take a quick look at those if you haven't already done so. And go ahead and entertain a motion if someone's ready to make a motion.
This is Mike James, move approval.
Okay, and a second, please.
Ed Walton with Coronado will second.
Great. And all in favor? Will we call the roll again,
So I'm
Alex?
just-
Would you like me to call
Yes,
it? or
I'll
do you
just
wanna
go
do
down
it?
the list. I'll do it. City of Carlsbad,
Aye.
City of Chula Vista,
Aye.
City of Coronado,
Aye.
City of El Cajon,
Aye.
City of Encinitas,
Aye.
City of Escondido,
Aye.
City of Imperial Beach,
Aye.
City of La Mesa,
Aye.
City of Lemon Grove,
Aye.
City of Poway,
Aye.
City of San Marcos,
Aye.
City of Santee,
Aye.
City of Vista,
Aye.
City of San Diego,
Aye.
City of Solana Beach,
Abstain.
County,
Aye.
and we didn't see Oceanside. Okay, so everybody aye, and for the exception of Solana Beach, which abstained, and the other members, City of Del Mar, City of National City, and City of Oceanside not present. Thank you, Chair.
Great, okay, thank you. And we will move on then to item 3, which is public comments and communications. I know that we have 2 announcements. Alex, would you like to move forward with your announcement?
Yes, I would like to introduce Tim Horniak, who is our new CTAC or SANDAG intern, and he's going to be supporting on the CTAC and a number of key activities related to the Local Streets and Road program. Tim, if you want to just, I don't know if you have the camera, say hello, but then Tim is also going to make a brief announcement.
Thank you, Alex. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Thank you for providing me with some time to introduce myself. I'm happy to be here supporting our CTAC meeting today. Besides supporting our meeting today, some of you might also remember me from the past SANTAC meeting, but I'm also in charge of working on the 2020 fiscal year local streets and road improvement LSRP submissions. As such, I would like to hijack this opportunity to provide an update on the submission. I'm finishing up on reviewing each individual submission, in the process of which I did some editing, some minor editing, as well as some typos that occurred. After concluding this revision, I'll be sending out an individual email to every agency. And as such, I would like to ask all of you who work through the emails to go over the revisions and do a final review of the submissions and then send it back to me so that we can proceed with the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Chair.
Great, thank you, Tim. And are there any other communications from members? And what about anyone from the public who would like to speak?
Chair, let me just bear with me, see if there's anybody from the public raising their hand. I don't see any hands raised, Chair. So no
Okay,
public
hearing
comments.
none, we will move on to item number 4, which is a transit update. We have Ray Major here to provide us with an update. Ray.
Excuse me, Julie. Chair. This is Mo, City of Solana Beach. Just wanted to mention that on the chat section, there are some notes from City of Oceanside and MTS expressing their presence at the meeting. We may want to acknowledge.
Thanks, Mo.
Thank you, Mo. All right, Ray.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me at your meeting. just from a process perspective, should I be sharing my screen, Kendall, and doing my own slides, or are you guys going to do that?
I could do it, Ray.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
I'll try. Let me just bring it up.
What? Can somebody who's listening to the news mute their Zoom meeting? Thank you. While Alex is bringing this up, I think what we wanted to share with you is just some of the difficulties that we're having in terms of forecasting our sales tax revenue, and kind of give you a schedule in terms of when we think we're going to be able to actually get around to doing it. Alex, if you're having problems, I can share my screen.
Okay, go ahead. I'm trying to bring it up.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ray, if you have it up.
Okay, can you guys see it?
Yes.
You can see my
Yes.
PowerPoint? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Okay. Okay. So here's kind of the bottom line. And so I kind of wanted to start with the conclusion at the beginning because it is kind of complicated, but this way you'll understand where we're going with it. The data collection in terms of taxable retail sales during this whole COVID has tremendous volatility in it. And taxable retail sales are really the foundation for collecting the sales tax. And so, you would expect that for every dollar sold, we would collect a 0.5-cent sales tax in terms of the Transnet. So they're highly correlated. And we've seen taxable retail sales just go all over the map during COVID. Another problem with trying to do this forecast is really the length and severity of the economic disruption. I mean, we have no idea when we're going to be able to open the economy, or not only fully, but I mean, at the beginning we were talking about V-shaped recoveries and U-shaped recoveries. And today in the news, I hear we're going back to purple, which means we're shutting down more. So, but they don't know if they're going to shut down until next week. And so it's very, very difficult, you can imagine, to forecast through this, because I could make an assumption that we get to yellow by the end of December, but then again, we could be in purple, which would have completely different economic impacts. The state and federal stimulus is really uncertain too. Are you going to spend trillions of dollars with billions coming to the region? Yes or no? I mean, these have a huge impact. The last time that the stimulus money came out, we saw a huge spike in retail sales. People spent tons of money on categories you wouldn't even believe. So the stimulus checks did actually increase sales tax revenue, but now we're sitting on the next set. So I don't know when this is coming out. Again, very difficult to forecast. And then to make things even worse, the state of California has really changed the software that they used in terms of doing our payments and collections, and they're extremely unpredictable. So I want to talk a little bit about that. But given all of this, we don't even have any real data from the COVID lockdown, because we only have data through Q1, which only includes the first 2 weeks of the COVID effect. And so we need to get some hard data on what's happened in the during the lockdown in order for us to really be able to do any type of prediction. And even when we get it, and that would be November 12th, there's going to be a huge number of assumptions that we would need to make in order to come up with some type of a forecast. I don't think it makes sense for us to put a number out there based on a set of assumptions that are so volatile, and they're not based in any type of historical precedence. And that, by that I mean like changing what businesses can open and the level, the purple, yellow, if we get some type of a vaccine, what's going to happen. I mean, these are very difficult things to forecast when it comes to sales tax. But let me give you some of the challenges that occurred with CDTFA. Back in the first quarter of 2018, they changed their software system. And so we were very used to using a system for many, many years, and that was the data collection for all of the businesses that paid sales tax. The money came in, and we had a pretty good idea of what we were going to get paid, and was pretty consistent. And then all of a sudden, they changed to this new system called the Centralized Revenue Opportunity System. And then they had software issues with it, as you can imagine. And we needed to make all sorts of adjustments through 2018. And then there were filing issues that happened, and there were 10,000 businesses that they didn't count in 2019. And then so we had to make corrections for that. And then there were all sorts of issues in terms of them making payments to us. So 2018 and 2019 were just, really kind of out of control. And I'll show you a little bit more about that. And then the Wayfair decision came down, which basically said that any online purchases need to pay California sales tax. That's the gist of it. And prior to this, about 50% of sales that were done online were being were paying sales tax because they were directly through, for instance, Amazon or eBay. So they would actually pay the sales tax. But those third-party vendors, like the small mom and pop shops, they didn't need to pay California sales tax. And so this was an effort to collect that. It happened. We had estimates of how much that would be. And then right as we started collecting that in September, all of a sudden, we have COVID coming up. And then the next thing we know, we have everybody moving to internet sales. Internet sales have just gone through the roof. And so it's hard to tell what of the internet sales is Wayfair versus what of the internet sales is actually COVID-related extra sales. So again, more issues there. This graph basically just shows you in numbers what happened, or this table. And if you look from 2013 to about 2017, you see that the top graph shows, that's what the California Department of Finance was giving us in terms of revenue. And it was right in alignment with the bottom one, which is what we were thinking was going to happen. And then in 2018, you can see we grew like 3, 4, 5%. That's kind of the range we've been growing in sales tax revenue through that time period. We had anticipated about 3.5% growth. And all of a sudden, because of some of these late payments and what have you, we had 6% in 2018. In 2019, because some of that, if you look at the top one, sorry, I'm not clear where I'm looking at. The $312 million, the 2019 number, revenue was up 6% in 2019, but 2019 was actually a year that was slowing, and 2018 was actually a really good year. We had collected $301 million, but according to California Tax and Fee Administration, we should have collected 294. So that's because these businesses that were supposed to pay in 2018 didn't pay till 2019. So we made an adjustment there. And so you see 2019 was relatively low, and then 2020, the economy was slowing and it was kind of flat is what we would have expected. But when you look at what we got, in 2020, you see that the $305 million at the top, it was actually down by 2.1%. So a lot more volatility in the top. The projection for 2021 was that we were going to be up about 2.62% pre-COVID. Our post-COVID forecast was that we were going to be down about 6.6%. So when you look at that, there's actually about a 9% difference between those two numbers, and that's what we're trying to really rectify. This is what it looks like graphically. Our sales, our adjusted sales tax collection, the blue line looks exactly like what we were getting, and then all of a sudden in 2018, you see that these lines start to diverge. So what does this look like from a monthly sales tax revenue receipts? This shows us every month that we've collected since 1988. You see some spikes on here and some troughs, and that's really, seasonality. Sometimes like during Christmas shopping season, you'll see higher spikes. And you'll see the Great Recession we turned down, okay? And then you'll see that we were increasing again all the way through November 2017. And the volatility was roughly the same. But look what happened when they came out with the new software system and collection. All of a sudden, the volatility in terms of the receipts that we're getting is just much larger than it had been at any time in the past. And so it's kind of easy to forecast through these blue lines because they kind of have a trend. It's much more difficult to forecast through this red line, as you can see, because of the wide swings in sales tax revenue collection. So pre-COVID, or pre-CROSS, the new system, we had a correlation of about 0.98 between the sales tax revenue that we collected and the actual number of taxable sales we had in the region. So this is almost a perfect correlation. So for every dollar of taxable sales, we got our half-cent sales tax, and so you see the lines are relatively close. There are little adjustments that could have happened back and forth between quarters, but essentially they're very close. And this is what it looks like after they came out with the new system. We have a correlation of about 0.86. We don't have the latest data here, but I'm sure that it's going to be way off again too. And so much, again, very difficult now. I can't use taxable retail sales to estimate what the state is giving us. And that concerns me because those things need to be correlated. Here's what we know about the San Diego economy. In May, we had lost about 450,000 jobs. A lot of the people had gone back to work since then. And in September, we have about 176,000 job loss. And you would imagine that would mean that fewer people, fewer dollars being spent on taxable retail sales, people not going out to restaurants, people not shopping at stores for clothes and things like that. So you would imagine that revenue would be down. We also know that we lost wages of about $4.5 to $5.5 billion. Now, some of that was made up with the stimulus money, but still people's buying patterns probably should have changed a little bit. Our gross regional product was down and taxable retail sales were also down. So if all these things are down, you would expect our sales tax revenue to be lower. This graph just shows you how much impact there was on different industries within San Diego. So we have about 144,000 unemployed workers in just 3 sectors: tourism, retail, and education. Tourism and retail include, tourism includes the restaurants and all the people who used to come to San Diego for conventions, and they would spend money at hotels and motels and pay taxes, and then they would go out to local restaurants and they would go to the zoo and SeaWorld, and people would come here for vacation, and none of that's happening. So you would imagine that, again, sales tax revenue collection would be down. And the same thing with retail. A lot of the retail shops are shut. And we don't see, as many stores open in malls as we did pre-COVID. We also started to use big data to try to track how the economy is looking in terms of people moving back and forth. This is cell phone data that we're tracking, or we don't track the cell phone data, but we use the data that's collected by our vendor. And what it showed is that economic activity during the height of the close down, which was back in April, was about 30 to 80% below where it was pre-COVID. And then as the economy started to open, those numbers went to 25 to 45% down. And then by the end of the data, which is like September, we're still down 30 to 50% in a lot of the categories that collect sales tax revenue. So these are kind of the major categories that collect sales tax revenue. Now the yellow line looks like it's really positive. And these are the home centers and hardware stores. So Lowe's and Home Depot became the new SeaWorld and Zoo of San Diego during the summertime. Everybody was doing home improvement projects, and those stores were doing really well. And you can see now, though, that the traffic is down a little bit. The green line is interesting because auto repairs were down when people weren't driving their automobiles. But as VMT started to increase and people started to drive again, even though they didn't go back to work, they started to do more discretionary trips. All of a sudden, what you see is that that category has gone up in terms of traffic, because there's deferred maintenance on the automobiles that need to be done. So that's interesting too. So this data is to me is pretty accurate. The blue and the purple line represent, they're just representative of retail and restaurants, which are 2 of the sectors that are hit the hardest. And the reason I highlight them is just to show you that we're down, and we have been for the last 6 months, at least on this particular graph, and now almost 8 months. And with traffic being down by 30 to 50%, you would expect less sales tax revenue to be collected. Transnet collection is in blue here. or this is what we're getting from the CDTFA in terms of sales tax payments. Now, there are two ways to look at the graph. The month of collection is when we actually got the money from the state. The month of sale is the date that that transaction occurred. So it's shifted by about 2 months. It takes them that long to process the data. But what you see here is that in March, we closed down the economy, or we started to close down the economy. If you look at March 20 for month of sale, where it says deferred payments, and the state also said that anybody who is estimated to pay less than $50,000 in sales tax revenue did not need to pay sales tax revenue, and they could defer the payment until the following year. So we see a huge dip in payments. And then we move over to April 2020 on the bottom scale, which is when we were at the peak closures. That's when everybody was, was shelter in place. But what we see is that our payments started to go up. And then as we reopen the economy, but not fully, and I showed you those other graphs in terms of, how far down we are, payments went up, and they went up over what we had the year prior. And then we started to reclose the economy again after about July 4th. And so you'd expect economic activity to come down again. But again, we see the payments going up. So these two theories are again, difficult to reconcile. So this is my second to the last slide, but this is really, I think, the conclusion as to why we're not able to really put out a forecast right now, and we want to wait for more data. The blue line represents the actual collections that we had, or that we've gotten. The red line represents the pre-COVID forecast. And so we would have expected that we would have just continued to go up a couple % per year, and that's mainly due to inflation and a little bit of growth. When we did our budget, which was adjustment, which we needed to do back in the April timeframe, economists were talking about a V-shape recovery, and that the economy would be shut down for it was about 6 weeks or so, and then it would start to open up again. And so what we budgeted on was that yellow line. So you see it coming down through 2021, and then it goes back up to baseline as we reopen the economy. But that's not really what happened, 1 quarter in or 2 quarters in terms of the data that we have now. When you look at the actual, based on collection, if we forecast out what we're getting from the state, we would be on that green line, which basically means that there was very little economic impact, and that we would be back to baseline sometime, early next year. And then if we look at what economists are saying in terms of a consensus, kind of a U-shaped recovery where businesses aren't open yet, it's going to take another year or 6 months for them to reopen and then come, we would be forecasting something like the blue line. So probably it's somewhere between the green and the blue, but that's a huge variation in terms of sales tax revenue. I don't feel comfortable as an economist saying that we're just going to go with what the state of California is giving us without a little bit more data that would support the fact that sales have actually increased. It could be that internet sales have gone up so significantly that it makes up the gap for everything else that wasn't being sold, like automobiles and gasoline and things like that. It is possible, but we don't have any quantitative data yet to see that, and we'll have more information in a couple of weeks, and that's when we're going to actually do our forecast. So this is my last slide that just looks at 9 different national forecasting firms, and these are the Goldman Sachs. They're the big companies that do this forecasting. In June, they thought the consensus showed that we would be down by about 7.8% in 2020, and then we would rebound by about 4.1% in 2021. But with all the federal stimulus money and the fact that we're kind of halfway open, that's actually been revised. In the September forecast, when you look at the consensus, is that we'll fall by about 4.7% in 2020, and then rebound by about 4.2% in 2021. So we still shouldn't be back to baseline in 2022, according to these forecasts. And the reason I show you that is because if we look at this, that's what impacts this. So that's kind of the data that's driving the blue line is the consensus of these economic forecasts. But this is the green is what we're getting from the state of California. So again, I have a problem trying to understand what's going on here, and we're waiting for more data. And so with that, Julie, I'll hand it back to you, and I'll take any questions if there are any questions.
Great, thank you so much, Ray. Are there any questions from the group for Ray?
If you do have some questions, can you raise your hands and we'll go down the list, please?
Okay. So I have a question. How, and I don't know if this is a question for you, Ray, or if it's a question for Alex, but how will these projections affect the city's budgeting? Generally, we get projections right in advance of our capital improvement program budgeting process, which usually occurs, say, April of each year. So do you expect to be providing, I guess it sounds like you're going to be providing a revised or updated forecast, but will we be looking to update our capital budgets in the interim, or will we wait until May or June to do that?
Alex, do you know the answer to that question?
I don't. I know we're going through some process right now for the RTIP process, the RTP process. I'm wondering if Sue or Jose could answer that question. Sue, are you online? You are, Sue.
Yeah, Alex, I'm here. Wait, hold on, camera. So we don't know yet what the impact will be, but we are proceeding with the budgets that we have in the RTIP. We're going to go ahead and approve the RTIP with the revenue that is shown, knowing that we'll probably have to do an amendment very early on as soon as Ray has a better forecast. But that being said, what's programmed in the RTIP is you can only draw what's available in revenue. So I think you guys should be a little conservative in your spending and what you can expect to receive this year until we have a better forecast available. You have anything to add, Jose?
No, I was just going to say what you said, but you said it better.
Chair,
Great, sounds good. Thank you. Were there any other questions, Alex?
Yeah, we have Ed Dean raising his hand.
Oh, fantastic, Ed.
Hi, thanks, Julie. Yeah, I have a kind of a question and concern. So, Sandag's sales tax revenues are down. I think I don't know of any city whose revenues aren't impacted by COVID-19. So we'll be getting less, I'm assuming we'll be getting less transit, local streets and roads dollars. But with that, and with the budget impacts from COVID, I'm assuming most of us are spending less on the maintenance of our roadways, which then has maintenance of effort impacts. So I'll be getting less Transnet revenue with the expectation I'll still be spending the same amount of discretionary funding on streets and roads. Has anything happened at Sandag to look into maintenance of effort and the impacts?
I'll kick that one to you, Jose. I don't know.
Okay, so thank you, Sue, and thank you, Ed. So to respond to your question, no, we have not looked at that yet. I think right now it's really too early to tell what we collectively are going to be getting. I mean, the early forecast said that we were going to get less. I think what Ray is saying is that what we're getting from the state is more than what we thought we were going to get, but we're not really sure what that means. And so we're still waiting for additional data to be able to say or better understand what's the true impacts of COVID on the revenues that we are collecting and expect to collect. So no, to answer your first direct question, We have not looked at that, but I see Ariana is on the screen as well. So Ariana, do you want to add anything?
I don't know if Ed was maybe referring to the performance audit recommendations in terms of maintenance, like the split. Is that what you were getting at?
No, it's just that, you know, cities have various revenues outside of sales tax. So we have, you know, we have some cities rely more on TOT. We have lease revenues we get property taxes. And so if those are down significantly, I have less funding to spend on roads. So I have less general fund coming in. So if I have less general fund, that discretionary funding, you know, has to be prioritized. And there's nothing in the ordinance. There's a 3-year payback, and I get that based on approval of ITOC. But along with that comes the increases in the MOE start, I think it's June 30th of 2021. And I think everybody's MOE goes up, except for maybe Vista's. So I've got a 3-year payback period, maybe, but I have a $400,000 a year increase in my MOE requirement. So I'm just concerned that, or wondering if anything is going to be looked at SANDAG to cover that MOE. Because I think one of Ray's early slides was the impact to tourism. And that's got to be a huge impact to the city of San Diego. So those are my concerns.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything at this point, but like you mentioned, there is an exception request process. So that is available to you.
Is that something, Ariana, that SANDAG staff could look into for us and see if there's an option available to locals? Because I think Ed is correct. Is there a way that we can look at the regulations that we have and kind of create something in response to this global pandemic?
Yeah, I think unfortunately Section 8, which is the maintenance of effort in the ordinance, is a lockbox. So I don't know that we can actually change that without a vote of the people. But it's something we can take back to our finance folks that work on the audits every year and see if there's anything that can be done to help out.
Okay, I appreciate that. Any other questions? All right.
I don't see any additional hands raised, Chair.
Okay. Well, Ray, thank you so much for the update. Really very much appreciated.
You're very welcome. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ray.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we'll move on to item 5, which is the Active Transportation Grant Program and Smart Growth Incentive Program. And Jenny Russo is here to provide an update on that for us. Jenny?
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hope you're doing well. A couple things I wanted to just share with you this morning. So the first one is as you know, our organization's going through some restructuring. So one of the things that we have done is merged some of our grant operations with our contracts operations. So we are now a grants and contracts department. Because there's a lot of similarities, as you can imagine, between those two things. So that's why you're seeing my face connected with this item. And connected to that, one of the things that we're doing is taking a look at all of the different grant programs, trying to find different synergies, making sure that we're communicating information in the same way. So what leads us to the Active Transportation and Smart Growth Incentive programs. As is mentioned in the agenda item, we typically do a call for projects for these about every 3 years or so. Traditionally, it kind of falls in that cadence. So normally we would be doing a call for projects around this time, sometime this fall. And the reason that we are not doing it, I know there's been some folks that have reached out and asked, are we doing one? Did we miss one? You haven't. We are pausing both programs because the regional plan is going through its update, and a lot of the grant programs funnel out of what's in the regional plan, what our initiatives are, what are our goals and our objectives. So we are not having a call for projects at all on either two program until the RTP is done and adopted. So once that effort is done, we will do similar to what we've done on past programs. The last time we had a call for projects for this, we had a number of workshops where we had all of you come in and kind of provide us information about what's needed in your cities, what types of things you think should be a benefit, criteria, all sorts of different things. So we'll mirror that same process. We're just shifting it over in timing. So it probably will be done sometime, we think, around 2022. So that will give time for the regional plan to get adopted, and then we'll kickstart those discussions. So you won't see a call for projects until that time. So I just wanted to relay that information with you. We're doing this jointly with planning. So Tracy Furshaw is here as well. If there's any questions on the planning perspective of what that might look like or feel like, but we'll be working on this jointly between both departments to get information out to you as much as we can. So just want to provide a quick update and see if you have any questions for me.
Great, thank you, Jenny. Are there any questions for Jenny?
Members, if you want to speak, you turn on your camera or raise your hand.
So I have a question. Are you anticipating substantial changes to the program with the new RTP? Has there been any discussion about how it might change?
You know, probably not huge substantive changes. One of the things that we may do is we're working on a new housing incentive program. So we may split these two off. Traditionally, they've kind of come through one call for projects, and they may split. We may do a little bit of either a merger with the Smart Growth Program and housing incentive. They may just be more aligned. We're not really sure. We're kind of waiting to see how that goes. I know there's some discussions that are happening right now. We're trying to collect some feedback on the housing incentive program. So that might be one thing that would be different. But in terms of like the types of things that we fund and all of that sort of mechanics, I don't imagine there would be a dramatic shift. It may just be priorities of projects that might score higher or lower based on whatever comes out of the RTP process.
Okay, great. Fantastic. All right. Any other questions? All right. Okay.
I don't see any hands raised, Chair, nor any cameras turned on.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Jenny. We appreciate you being here today.
Nice seeing you all.
Thank you, Jenny.
All right, so we'll move on to item 6, which is the Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act Performance Management Safety Targets. And Sam Sanford is here to update us on that. Sam?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, and good morning, CTAC members. I'm bringing up my screen right now. I'm trying to, at least. Okay. I believe you should be seeing my screen now. All right, seeing a head nod.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Thank you. So this item is actually, it's a two-part item. So part 1, or part A, as you look at your agenda, I believe it starts on page 10 for this staff report. Part A is going to be familiar to this group. It's our 4th year setting regional targets for crashes on public roads. And there's a part B, which is going to be a new requirement. It's rolling out this year, coming from Federal Transit Administration. So there's a new piece, and that's just going to be an overview of what those requirements are. So before kicking this off, I want to briefly preface the presentation on a note that safety is critical to all of us, especially safety planning, safety programming, really identifying what projects are going to drive down severity and number of crashes. This particular item is focused on the federal requirement of setting annual targets for key performance measures. But I want to emphasize that there is ongoing work, parallel projects or planning work that's helping to identify what projects, programs, and policies will help drive down the number and severity of crashes. So I want to just, keep that in mind as we go through this. So we have just 2 examples where SANDAG is continuing to coordinate with Caltrans on this. Is the Strategic Highway Safety Plan, SHSP. It's a 4-year document that identifies challenge areas and then means and ways to address those challenge areas. And there's also the Highway Safety Improvement Program now has an implementation plan, a 1-year plan on how to best spend those dollars, and that's ongoing as well. So I wanted to give that little update, prior to getting into this specific conversation that's more focused just on setting targets for the federal requirement. This is the 4th round of setting targets, started back in 2018. And for the prior 3 rounds, SANDAG has elected to support the statewide targets. So we have 2 options as an MPO. We either support the statewide targets or we develop regional ones. Staff continues to recommend that we support the statewide targets. The rationale behind that is that when we look at our proportion of crashes and our population, we're actually doing relatively well compared to the statewide numbers. And we'll see that in some of the charts as I go through this presentation. So next slide has the actual 5 performance measures themselves. These came out of rulemaking from Federal Highway Administration. So the process and the data sources are all listed out as far as how we have to go through this, calculating them. We have the number and rate of fatalities, the number and rate of serious injuries, and then also we have the 5th bullet there is a combined measure for non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries combined. The process for setting targets is Caltrans first sets them back in August. They work with the Office of Highway Safety to identify the same targets for some of the measures. Then they pass that information on to the MPOs. For this year, for setting 2021 targets, Caltrans has used a trend-based approach. I'll talk about that in the next slide. SANDAG is required to set targets, or at least to document to Caltrans what our approach is going to be. Are we going to support the statewide, or are we going to set our own regional targets? And that must be done by February 28th. Now, if SANDAG continues to support the statewide target, then obviously we do not need to set regional targets. We provide essentially a document of resolution stating that we're supporting it. And then within the Regional Transportation Improvement Program, we highlight projects, safety-specific projects that are kind of documentation that we are supporting the statewide target. So as your staff is going through project track and programming dollars into the RTIP, we also ask them for information about, is this a safety-related project? If it's 100% safety, or if it's just partial safety, so we try and get a proportion of how much that project is supporting the safety targets. All right, so this slide actually has the 2021 targets from Caltrans. The left column has the performance measures themselves. The center column has the numeric target as required by federal highways. And we're required to use a 5-year rolling average. That's why you see some decimal points on some of these. And then on the far right, you have the percent reduction. I had mentioned earlier that Caltrans is using a trend-based approach. So what they did is they looked at the most recently available observed data. So for fatalities, that was 2017 to 2018. That was the most recently available final data that they could look at to see how things are changing across the state. They looked at that change. They also looked at externalities, potentially changes in the economy, for instance, and also what projects are under construction right now, but are not currently open to traffic that could also have additional effects to these safety numbers. So they take all that into consideration, and they arrived at an anticipated reduction of 2.9% in fatalities in 2021. They did that same approach for serious injuries, and they came up with 1.3% reduction. For the last measure, which is non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, they combine the two, since that is fatalities and serious injuries together. The next few slides go into charts to kind of show how the state is doing, and also we have the San Diego region numbers in there as well, just to better understand any trends and any changes. So when we're looking at fatalities on this chart, I should state that the bars are annual values and the lines are the 5-year rolling average. Everything in blue is statewide, and orange is for the San Diego region. These green dots off to the right are targets. So we can see targets for 2018, 2019, and 2020, which are already set. And then we have the 2021 target out there in the distance. So one of the challenges with setting targets is that Caltrans has had to set them without knowing what happened in 2019 and 2020. They can infer a little bit of what they're hearing, but they don't have final data. So that is a big leap and a big challenge in setting a target, 3 years without having interim data for these previous 2 years. They're setting it for 2021. Now, in fatalities, you can see there was a gradual increase over the last decade. It seems to have hopefully peaked back in 2016, 2017. We're hoping that it is continuing to settle back down into these as these years become available in 2019 and 2020. That's statewide. When you look at the San Diego area, it's been relatively level and stable throughout that same time period. Taking those same numbers and applying the vehicle miles traveled for the statewide, again, is everything in blue, and the San Diego region is everything in orange. We can see that same kind of arch of a higher number in 2016 and 2017, and then declining again in 2018. San Diego region generally follows the statewide values, but is lower, even though we normalize this for the amount of people are traveling on our roadways. For serious injuries, we have this trend of increasing injuries as we get into 2018 values. Again, statewide values are in blue. San Diego region is orange. San Diego region staying relatively stable across this time period. Serious injury rate. Oops, go back there 1 second. Again, we can see how San Diego region is doing relative to the state. We are, based on vehicle miles traveled, we're performing at a lower rate than the statewide numbers. We're a little closer in some of the years, but in the last 2 years of observed data, we've actually gotten considerably better than the statewide averages. And then last one is the vulnerable user performance measure, which combines fatalities and serious injuries together. And we can see that this one is also statewide is holding a fairly stable or steady increase, unfortunately. And the San Diego region is steady. So with 2020, there's been we're finally able to look back at 2018 observed data. So one of the requirements of transportation performance management coming from Federal Highway Administration is they need to look back and see how states have done relative to the targets they set. So now in 2020, we can actually look back at 2018 and see, and that's what Federal Highways did earlier this year. And in order to make significant progress, state DOTs need to demonstrate that they have beat their target, met their target, or been better than baseline in 4 out of the 5 performance measures. Unfortunately, California was unable to achieve that. There was 3 areas where they did not meet that level or that threshold. Those were in fatality rate, serious injury rate, and number of serious injuries. So the consequence of that, one consequence is it doesn't affect California. So for the highway safety improvement programming, that fund type, some states elect to move some of those dollars to other pots of money. California does not do that, but this would restrict that flexibility, but it's a non-issue for California. The second piece is that Caltrans must develop an implementation plan for the highway safety improvement program. So that'll be a 1-year document that they'll need to update for each year that they are not showing that significant progress of how they're going to analyze and then spend those limited HSIP dollars. As far as next steps, for the on-road, all public roads, safety measures, we're continuing to reach out to the working groups throughout the fall and winter, and then start with the policy advisory committees. We'll be going to the SANDAG Board of Directors in mid-December to ask them to approve the targets. And then by February 28th, we'll be sending Caltrans that resolution of Sandag's election. In the 2021 Regional Transportation Improvement Program, we will have a section that highlights projects that support the safety targets. And that has been in past in the 2018 RTIP as well. We'll just be updating it with the new projects that are coming in for the 2021 RTIP. Similarly, in the 2021 Regional Plan, we'll have an appendix that highlights what the targets are and how the state has done relative to those targets. So it's kind of a tracking progress on targets for the past 4 years, since each plan is coming out approximately every 4 years according to regulations. So that was part A of the presentation. Part B is much shorter, but I want to pause there and see if there's any questions. If that's okay with you, Chair, or should I push on?
Oh, sure. Are there any questions for Sam?
Chair, I don't see any hands raised, but if members
Okay,
have
I
a
have
comment.
a question for Sam. I'm curious, so the state is actually doing counts then to determine what the VMT is, because we can all expect that the VMT's reduced substantially as a result of COVID. So they're changing that, or they're tracking that, is that correct?
Yeah, and the source for the VMT is dictated in the rule, so they have to use the Highway Performance Monitoring System, HPMS. So on that one, there are pretty good counts on interstate and highway facilities. And then as we get down to on the federal aid classification system, when we get to local roads, it's more of a sampling, and then they extrapolate from that. So yes, there is observed data on it, but it's covering all public roads. So there's also a little bit of art that goes with it, but it's following the HPMS data source.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions before we move on to the next section?
I don't see any hands raised, Chair.
Okay, great. Please continue.
All right, 3 slides, if I remember correctly. All right, so this is a related rule, but it's coming from Federal Transit Administration. It's also safety focused. And for this rule, it's requiring transit agencies that receive certain FTA funds, or Federal Transit Administration funds, to develop a Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan. It's a mouth, that's PTASP, is a new acronym for me. For these plans, they must include measures, performance measures that match. There's a National Transit Safety Plan, and that plan gets updated every few years. I'll go over the performance measures that are in the current plan, but there is some thoughts that those measures will change in the future. For the transit agencies, these get updated every year. So 2020 is their first year, and both MTS and NCTD have finalized theirs and shared theirs with Sandag. From the transit agencies, after they shared the information with the Metropolitan Planning Organization, or essentially Sandag, then we start this coordination process of how would we develop regional targets. And that is a requirement to set up those regional targets, but as far as the details of how that is done, it's very open. And I think FTA left it open on purpose in order to kind of satisfy the needs of urban areas across the nation. So we're continuing to coordinate with MTS and NCTD on how best to approach this. We're looking at potentially, weighted averages where those make sense, but also there's some other pieces that we want to bring in as well. So the measures themselves, according to the National Transit Safety Plan, there's only, they count this as 4 measures. I broke it out a little bit so it's easier to understand the total, but we have total fatalities. And so this is looking at reportable fatalities, and they lean on the National Transit Database, NTD, as the source. And this rule has a lot more nuance as far as how they include or exclude certain numbers. So for fatalities and injuries in general, they exclude injuries and fatalities that come from trespass or from suicide. So they're just looking at the other related injuries and fatalities. They have fatality rate as well, which is by vehicle revenue mile. And then injuries are the same. This is total injuries and total injury rate. Then let's see, the 5th one down is safety events. So as opposed to looking at kind of the number of victims, now we're just looking at number of events. So it's a little bit of a different metric there. But it also looks at the total number and then the rate. The last one is system reliability. So they're looking at the distance between breakdowns. And what they consider a breakdown is a major mechanical failure. So if you're taking a coach bus and it ends up having a motor issue and has to pull over the side of the road, that would qualify. So those are the performance measures that we're working with MTS on and NTTD on developing regional targets. They have their agency targets already set and in their public transportation safety agency plan. Our next steps, continue that coordination with the 2 agencies in our region that qualify for this requirement. December 11th, we'll be going to the Transportation Committee with the recommendation of those regional targets. And also on December 18th, going to the Board of Directors. We'll include the targets in the 2021 Regional Transportation Plan. And then for the Regional Transportation Improvement Plans that are adopted after July of 2021, we'll be required to incorporate projects that help support those targets as well. One piece on this FTA requirement, this is the first year it's rolling out. It's been slow. They've provided some additional timeline because of COVID and other complications that are going on. So bizarrely enough, we're setting 2020 targets in this round in November and December of 2020. So this first round, it's a little complicated with the time frame. In future years, as we go forward with this, the transit agencies will have their final numbers in February, March, and that's when SANDAG will be able to start working on the regional numbers, hopefully March, April of that calendar year. That's all I have on this new requirement from FTA, and happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you, Sam. Any further questions for Sam?
Chair, I don't see any hands raised or any cameras turned on from member agencies.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Sam. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Okay, and so we'll move on to item 7, which is the CTAC and SANTEC Council, updates. So it looks like Ellison is here to provide us an update on this.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sharing my screen right now. So I wanted to take a quick opportunity to give CTAC an update on a effort that SANDAG has undertaken as part of our fiscal year 2021 overall work plan. SANDAG staff has undertaken this effort to assess the current state of 2 primary working groups, the CTAC, which you are all part of, as well as the San Diego Regional Traffic Engineers Council, or SANTEC, which some of you are also part of. The goal of this effort is to establish a revised working group structure that supports SANDAG as well as member agencies to prove coordination and engagement to reflect and re-examine the working group role as we get into a new emerging transportation trends and technologies, as well as some of local initiatives like smart cities. So wanted to share an effort that jump-started this project, which was an initial focus group session that Chair Procopio was involved with, as well as, let me forward the slide here. I can find this advance button. As well as Mario Sanchez from the city of El Cajon and Minji May from the city of Santee. So, as well as Bill Valley from Chula Vista. So we tried to get a mix on this focus group of CTAC and SANTEC. I tried to get the chair or vice chair, which again, we appreciate Chair Procopio's involvement in it, as well as Minji May from, who's the vice chair of SANTEC. We tried to get this focus group to represent the different sub-regions of our region. So we grabbed everyone from the 4 corners of the region, as well as representation from the city of San Diego and the county of San Diego. So we got to share this session with this small focus group. And again, the goal was to kind of see what the future of Sandag and Santec might be. And I want to quickly, you have an attachment for item number 7, which has these slides as well as the notes. And I just wanted to, bring up some of the challenges that we came up with in terms of our initial thoughts that we provided to the focus group, and won't, I'll allow you to go over the meeting minutes in terms of the findings or the response from the focus group. But we really did want to open up the charters again for both groups. Again, both groups have been around for several decades, and wanted to make sure that that charter reflects our current needs. We did address issues of lack of engagement and poor attendance on both groups. Attendance has been kind of on and off, as you know, with Santec as well through the years, and want to understand why that's happening. We do acknowledge that there's a lot of agenda items that are redundant between the two working groups. And for some of the smaller agencies where the members are serving on both groups, that can be a little redundant. So, and we did want to get into a little bit of, how do we engage the private sector, and how do we mix it up and talk about information and technology, knowledge transfer and exchange? How do we better do that moving forward between the two groups? So again, didn't want to spend too much of your time, but appreciate the opportunity to give you these slides, where our goal as staff is to develop recommendations for how we're going to move forward. And we would like to present that to you at our December meeting, which right now we're initially thinking might be a joint meeting of both Santec and CTAC, but stay tuned on that. We'll figure out how that would work in terms of having both groups together in a December meeting. But with that, just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you, and to open it up for any questions that you might have based on what you might have read from the slides and the notes that we provided ahead of time.
And before we, sorry, Chair Julie, before we open it up, maybe just this is really kind of a reporting out based on some initial discussions. And as Allison alluded, there is the attachment included in the agenda. But we do plan on coming back to both CTAC and Santec. Thank you.
So thank you, Allison. I appreciate Sandag's efforts to work on this. I think that we do have the ability to address some of the issues that we've been having between the two committees, and make those committees more effective and efficient for everybody. So I'm looking forward to participating in that. I'm curious to know from the CTAC if there were any items that you felt we missed with respect to things that we'd like to address as we look at these two committees.
And I would also like to offer, Chair, that if they want to take some time to review the attachments, feel free to send them over to Allison, and I'll follow up with the CTAC general email as a follow-up to this meeting as well, Chair.
Great. Yes, thank you. If anybody has any comments that they'd like to share offline, I think the goal is to try to use our time as wisely as possible, as well as really provide the region with the best input and be as efficient as possible. So is there anyone that would like to speak on this item at all?
We do have Vice Chair Mo raised hand.
Great, fantastic. Mo.
Thank you, Julie, and the rest of the team. I just wanted to make a comment about the effort. First of all, thank you for those of you who are going through this process. I know that's an extra time, but in general, I welcome this process and hopefully the outcome, primarily because it's definitely is going to be a lot of efficiencies to be gained through this process, and not just at the Sandag level between us that participate, but also internally within our own organizations, because I'm sure most of you are in the same boat, because we have to do internal communication between the two groups and making sure that we don't miss anything, and or as you are looking into it, there are not too much of an overlap and redundancy. So in general, I personally welcome this effort, and I'm obviously open for discussions for the future conversation, but I think it's a great effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo.
Thank you, Mo. Are there any other comments? Anyone?
We have, Chair, we have Melody Rocco from the City of Poway raise her hand as well.
Fantastic. Melody.
Hi, guys. I just wanted to say that I think, I know that COVID caused us to have meetings this way, but it's actually been a blessing for me because I don't know about anybody else, but driving all the way downtown San Diego for this meeting, and I was also on the Santec group for a while. I actually have another staff person that's doing that now, but I mean, it's a lot to drive 45 minutes each way. And, you know, it's an entire morning out of my day. And, you know, being from a small city, I have a lot of other responsibilities. So if it's an option to continue doing it this way in the future, I would be totally on board for that. And I think that would be a helpful asset to it.
That issue certainly came up, Melody, and it's something that we will certainly consider moving forward. It's one of the things that COVID is kind of teaching us, right? Our attendance is up on both groups, I believe, with going remote. We're seeing folks attend more regularly, at least, you know, the first 3 months here since we've gone back to the remote meetings for CTAC and Santec. So point well taken. Thank you.
Yes, and I think it also provides us with the opportunity to bring in other staff members who might be interested in a particular item to get the update. So I think I agree with you, Melody. I think that's been a nice change for us as well. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment or?
Chair, I don't see any additional hands or any cameras turned on.
Okay, well, thank you, Allison. We appreciate your work.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to item 8, nomination and election of chair and vice chair. Looking forward to this item. So is there a staff report associated with this, Alex?
There is, yeah, I'll introduce, take the discussion.
Sure.
So per our charter, this is a 2-year term, and the way we've done it in the past, that the vice chair would seek approval, or I guess we have to vote to make sure that the vice chair moves to the chair position for a 2-year term. So the nominations would be to select a vice chair from the CTAC memberships to serve that next term. We could go through nominations right now, and depending on how the group feels, we could then proceed with appointment chair, or we could just go through nominations today and maybe seek appointment in December. So that's really up for discussion, but it's a 2-year term.
Okay. So can I make a nomination? I would like to nominate Mo to become the chair. I think he'll be an excellent chair for our committee.
And I apologize, Mo, it's more of a confirmation to move to the chair.
Okay, great. So is that something that we can vote upon then?
Correct.
Yes?
So that's a yes.
Can we start with that then?
Yes, please.
Great.
So if everybody would like to move with confirming Mo Samak from the City of Solana Beach as chair of the CTAC for the next 2-year term. And I'll just go verbal, or actually this remote thing. There you go. I'm just gonna go down the list.
Okay, great.
Okay. So this is for confirmation to confirm that Vice Chair Mo will move to the chair position for the next 2-year term. City of Carlsbad.
Aye.
City of Chula Vista.
Yes to Mo.
City of Coronado.
Aye.
City of El Cajon.
Aye.
City of Encinitas.
Oh, I think Ed may have left.
Okay, no
He had to
problem.
leave a little early.
City of Escondido.
100% aye.
City of Imperial Beach.
Aye.
City of La Mesa.
Aye.
City of Lemon Grove. I think James left too. Mike James. City of Poway.
Aye.
City of San Marcos.
Aye.
City of Santee.
Aye.
City of Vista.
Aye.
City of San Diego. Okay, I don't see, I don't hear
Aye.
Gary. Oh, thank you, Gary. Thank
aye.
you, Gary.
Thank you.
The county,
Aye.
and then City of Oceanside. I believe we had David, but I'm not sure if he's still on.
Yes, he put in the chat, yes.
Okay, thank you. Perfect. Thank you, Chair. Okay.
Great. So with unanimous approval, Mo will be our new chair. And then I will take nominations for a vice chair.
Nobody wants to nominate? I'm looking for hands. I'm looking for cameras.
Perhaps Mo can speak to the job of the vice chair and what a fantastic opportunity it is.
Thank you, Julie. I really appreciate it. I wasn't quite sure what the protocol is under this new process. On and whispered into each other's ear. Do you want to But first of all, I want to thank you especially, and the rest of the team to have their faith and trust, honor, and not just the responsibility. So thank you, and I will gladly accept the nomination, and I hope that I can live up to your expectation. I've been watching you, Julie, Ed, Frank, Mario, many other capable chairs in the past. So I hope that I can do as good of a job as the rest of you, especially you, Julie. To be honest, I think everybody would be more than qualified to be a vice chair, but I would offer that we would recommend for Bill Morgan of the County of San Diego to be the vice. Obviously, it depends on his availability and willingness. I haven't had a chance to talk to him offline, so I'm going to put him on spot to see if he's willing to do it, and then the rest of the group.
Thank you, Mo. That is a surprise. Unfortunately, I don't know that I'll still be here in 4 years, so I'll have to decline that offer. Or 2 years.
Frankly,
Okay.
and that's okay. That's okay. I would, and I want to qualify for that. None of us know if we're going to be here for 4 years, and that percentage is even higher for those of us like myself who've been in this industry for many years. But I think there will be a wrong that if one of us leave for organization is not going to disseminate, there will be opportunities for others to step in and fill in for the remainder of the terms. I respect your decision, and I will.
I'm sorry, Mo, you were breaking up a little bit at the end of that. What did you say?
Sorry about that. That's one of the reasons I don't go on camera, because the internet in City Hall is really horrible. And hopefully that will change in the near future. But no, I was going to say that, and would prefer to someone else to make a nomination at this point before I make my second one.
Julie, if I could, this is Ed Dean.
Yes, Ed.
Could instead of me nominating somebody, could I just request that if somebody wouldn't mind doing it, if maybe they could just put their hand up, at least that gives us a clue of who would at least has some interest in doing it before we force it on some unsuspecting member.
I don't see any hands.
Good try, Ed.
All right.
I'll make a nomination then. This is Ed.
Okay.
So Melody's been very vocal today, and I think she'd be an excellent vice chair.
I would like to second that, particularly because our meetings will be virtual, hopefully moving forward. Hopefully that will make her participation easier. Melody, would you be interested in accepting the nomination?
Can I ask what is involved?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. So the vice chair will be vice chair for 2 years. Generally, the responsibility is to just fill in if the chair is not available. And after 2 years, the hope is that the vice chair will transition to become the chair and run the meetings. Essentially, is the main responsibility. From time to time, there might be an ad hoc committee, such as the ad hoc committee that's happening right now to consider the formation of the SANTAC and the CTAC and what we might change. But it might be a handful of meetings. It hasn't been to, it's not a big time commitment.
I guess I will learn not to speak during these meetings next time, but yes, that's fine. If that's what the group would like, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hey, Melody, it's Mario Sanchez, City of El Cajon. You'll find it worthwhile. It's not very difficult to run these meetings. I mean, there's some hot topics, but it's pretty straightforward, and I think you'll get a lot of benefit out of this.
I second that. Having that position for 2 years, majority of the time, the chair, at least for my case, Judy, have been excellent taking care of most of the agenda items, and I was basically there for the ride. So it's a fulfilling responsibility.
Great. So let's see. I think we had a nomination, and I seconded the nomination. Can we vote?
Chair, just brief.
Yes.
Who made the nomination? Was that Ed Dean?
That was Ed.
Okay.
That doesn't need to go in the minutes though, right?
And then Melody, just to put on record, you accepted the nomination, correct?
Yes.
Okay, now Chair, we can proceed with the appointment. Thank you.
And we need to vote, correct?
I think are there overall approval?
Say all in
Yes.
favor? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye. Thank you, Melody.
Anyone opposed? And any abstentions? Okay,
Perfect.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melody.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you stepping up. And to Mo as well. I'm sure he'll be a fantastic chair. And so we'll move on to item 9, which is the Caltrans updates and announcements. And Bing is here, I believe.
I thought I saw him.
Yes, he's here. You're muted, Bing.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Just a sec. I have to mute the phone. I'm not sure why I can't speak through the regular phone, but let's see. In the interest of time, I'll just highlight a few items. You do have the packet of information for the updates from local assistance. Let's see, first item I wanted to mention was to have the agencies to continue to submit invoices. We are really frequently pressured by FHWA to remind our agencies to submit these invoices. So if you can do so, that would be much appreciated. Actually, we are trying to pay you. So if you cannot be motivated to get your own money, then I'm not sure how else we can motivate you. The second item I wanted to mention was the funding request. So this is the new federal fiscal year. Please submit those funding requests to us as soon as you can. It's continuing to be the case that funds are running out earlier and earlier in the year, especially right now. And I think the political situation is not helping that. There's no new Transportation Act right now. There is a continuing resolution to extend the FAST Act and the funding programs, but for now, that continuing resolution is only up through December 11th. So only about 20% of the normal annual allotment has been released. So there's very, very few funding right now. It is based on a first come, first serve. So if you do have are ready to submit these funding requests and your funding is programmed, then please submit them ideally before the end of next January 2021. Next item is the California Transportation Commission meeting dates. Just please keep in mind the preparation schedule and that all documents need to be submitted to us for either funding allocation requests or time extension requests about 2 months prior to the meeting date that you see on the preparation schedule. Next item, Quality Assurance Program, the QAP. We have 2 agencies that need to renew the QAPs very soon. One is SANDAG. Your QAP is expiring in March in a few months. And for City of San Diego, the QAP is expiring in May. So please be reminded that we cannot process any requests for construction funding if the QAP is not there. And for a couple of agencies like Poway and Solana Beach, I know you haven't had a local assistance related project in a while. You do need various documents like master agreements and the QAP on file before we can process those funding allocations, particularly because I know you have submitted, I think, the application for, I believe, like HSIP or ATP funding with the recent call for project cycles. Speaking of the Highway Safety Improvement Program, HSIP Cycle 10, that is being reviewed right now by our headquarters. So I can give you a little bit of the numbers. I believe statewide there was 458 applications that were submitted for the HSIP funding, of which 40 are in District 11. So that includes both the San Diego and Imperial regions. It will probably take headquarters a while because of the sheer number of applications that were submitted for this cycle. And then last item I wanted to briefly mention was for each agency to check the training schedule. So we have a number of online virtual classes available now. So that should also make Melody happy that there's no traveling involved in many of our classes that's being offered right now. So please check the website and the local assistance blogs. That's all the items I wanted to mention right now. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Bing. Are there any questions for Bing?
I don't see any hands, Chair.
Okay, all right, well, thank you so much. And then we'll move on to item 10, which is upcoming meetings. So our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, December 3rd. As Ellison mentioned earlier, there's a possibility we might be looking to combine that meeting with Santec staff so that we can discuss the 2 committees and how they interact. In addition, I've asked if Alex could please bring the 5 big moves presentation back. I understand that last week's meeting, we weren't able to have a quorum, and so we weren't able to officially provide feedback as a committee on the 5 big moves. And so I've asked if he could come back to one of our regularly scheduled meetings so that as a group we could discuss the vision and provide comments.
And
yes.
Chair, so just for CTAC and Santec members, so we're going to be meeting internally on that possible dates, and maybe I'll have a focused discussion with our chair and also the Sandtech chair on the date, and we'll get more information on the proposed date by next week as a placeholder.
Great. Sounds
Okay.
fantastic. All right, so we will move on to adjournment. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. We look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Julie.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Everyone take care.
Great job.
Thank you.